We are set for the final month of the regular season. I'm Bobby Broyles along with Tim McDonald for the Week 10 edition of This Week in CA Football presented by Geico. Well, there were plenty of treats from this past Saturday, Tim, so let's get into the good stuff.
Play on words.
Yeah, like that.
I like it. In Towson, the Tigers pulled off the upset. I don't think a lot of people saw that one coming. And no disrespect to the Tigers, but hats off. A huge win over the Blue Hens. A touchdown pass with 35 seconds remaining sealed the much-needed 18-17 victory that ended Delaware's three-game winning streak and kind of shook things up a little bit on Saturday. James Madison shut out New Hampshire in Harrisonburg 21-0 behind a big-time 80-plus yard interception. That was a close game in the second half, and all of a sudden, Rashad Robinson comes out of nowhere. The return for a touchdown leads to a 21-0 lead and a lead that New Hampshire could never just get back in the game. The 8-0 start is the best for the Dukes all time, while Brian Shore, also congrats to him, became the all-time career leader for touchdowns at JMU with 53. It's remarkable to think about how many years he's really been a full-time starter, too.
Yep.
Elon moved to 7-1 for its best start since 2009, while the team's 7-game winning streak is the longest since 2008. The Phoenix racked up over 400 yards, yes, 400 against Villanova in a 19-14 win on the Maine line, a place where not a lot of people go and have that much success offensively. And Ray Bolden for Stony Brook caught 2 touchdowns, and the Seawolves limited Richmond's ground attack to less than 50 yards to move to 6-2 overall, 5-1 in the league. The 6 overall victories are the most for Stony Brook in the regular season since 2012, and the 5 wins in CAA play are the most since joining the conference in 2013. Shouts out to Rhode Island as well, convincing another team that needed a win in that style of fashion. 31-14 on the road over Albany. The defense allowed just 125 net yards to go with 7 sacks, negative rushing yards allowed, along with Maine also winning its 3rd straight, beating William & Mary in Orono 23-6 behind a stifling black hole defensive showing that really limited and forced William & Mary to have that same type of offensive inconsistency.
A lot of 5-star matchups this Saturday as a number of teams are jockeying their position for postseason aspirations. Action starts at 12 noon in Kingston with the number 1 James Madison Dukes on the road against Rhode Island.
The Dukes' ability to squeeze the life out of offensive game plans continues to provide another staple to a unit that's been the strength of the team so far in 2017. Opponents have scored 4 touchdowns on 5 of 9 attempts total this fall in the red zone. Wow. That's not a typo. So just to think about when you think you've broken down the chains and you've broken through and we're going to field goal here, JMU clamps down time and time and again, and that they do it when it matters the most. Rhode only passed for 123 yards in the win over Albany, but rushed for a season-high 209 yards. 2 of those touchdowns on the ground came from Harold Cooper. 38-plus minutes for time of possession also. That obviously played a huge factor. But if you're the Rams, you come in needing to know you're going to take some shots. You're going to have to take some shots to pull off an upset. You're going to have to take some chances. Rhode actually enters with more total offensive touchdowns scored than Elon and Delaware to give you an idea of being able to take those chances when the opportunities present themselves for the Rams. Joshua Lawson has thrown for 2 touchdowns in 3 straight games versus just 2 picks during that same stretch. Kind of a little bit developed here a little bit and kind of started to find his favorite target. Aaron Parker right now is averaging 93 yards a game and leads the way for the Rams with 7 receiving touchdowns, but trying to somehow find balance. That's going to be the ultimate key if you want any chance. Harold Cooper, TJ Anderson, both have accounted for 7 of the team's 9 rushing scores this season and are going to need to play their best game of the year to have a shot in this one. This will be the earliest start to a game for the Dukes all season long. Let's remember the earliest start as well since September 23rd versus Maine at home. That was a 1:30. So a road game in conference play, noon kick. You have to imagine it's going to have the attention from Mike Houston and crew. You can bet that. Expect JMU to try and pound the line of scrimmage versus a defense that is tied for the CAA high, allowing 13 touchdowns on the ground. 3 rushing scores in the past 3 games for James Madison equals getting Trey Sharp, Marcus Marshall, getting those guys kind of back into that nice 1-2 punch that they were in and so accustomed to earlier this fall.
And you got to think, the Rhode Rams on their mind is going to be last year's game in a way. The
very
beating
true.
They took in Harrisonburg.
Very good point.
At 1 o'clock, Stony Brook returns home to take on Albany for the Golden Apple. Big game for the Seawolves as they look to stay in the hunt for a conference title while the Danes try to play spoiler.
We talk about how important certain games are every week, and we try to build up certain games and certain opponents, but it's human nature. But this one is that much larger for Stony Brook, and you know what? I'm going to provide 2 reasons right away. Number 1, at 5-1 in CAA play, the Seawolves have only 2 league games left versus Albany and Maine, at Maine, I should say, to end the year. And being able to stay in that title race with 1 loss, depending on how other things play out from other teams, that could be huge. So getting a win this weekend is absolutely critical. Number 2, if you can find a way to beat a state rival and get to 7-2 before a non-conference game against Wagner, the pressure and the weight on the shoulders starts to ease off a little bit about can Stony Brook make the postseason? Can they be that team? The pressure starts to release a little bit. And Albany right now owns the most recent bragging rights in this series, beating Stony Brook at home a year ago. Remember, that was kind of a slugfest, 13-6, a sloppy game that left the Seawolves with plenty to think about in the offseason. The home team in this series has benefited well, dating back to 2013, winning every game that home team has during that same stretch. Nate Hatalski set a Division I record for Albany last week with 21 total tackles. Eli Menser picked up a 69-yard fumble return, and Albany got back within that one late at Rhode, versus Rhode, I should say, but ultimately, those were the only positives for the most part that you take away with if you're the Danes. Right now, they come in averaging 19 points per game compared to 28.5 for the Seawolves. Will Brunson and Evan Sussman both could see action under center and are coming off tough outings a week ago. But the spark, I think, needs to come from somewhere and needs to come from someone in order to step up, and that's right now. Stony Brook is 3-1 at home this year and has outscored opponents 142-65 in the first half. Keep an eye on that, the fast start, if they're able to move the ball that well. Joe Carbone and Ray Bolden continue to team up in the red zone, and no one, quite frankly, has had the answer for those two yet. We saw it again. Bolden has had 2 touchdowns 3 times this season. Anything can happen between two rivals, but it's difficult to slow down the momentum Stony Brook owns over the past 2 games. Big games, too, big wins, especially how the offense continues to come up with answers. So I think that, plain and simple, that's what it comes down to.
Also at 1 o'clock on Fox College Sports Atlantic and Fox Sports Go, Villanova plays host to Richmond. Both teams with their backs against the wall, Tim, if they want to make the postseason.
Raise your hand if you would guess before the season that each team would be 4-4 overall and 2-3 in conference play with 3 weeks left to play in the regular season.
My hands are down.
Yeah, I'm keeping mine down too, but that's just the way things have gone for both of these teams. Spiders dropped back-to-back CAA games for the first time since November of 2015. 2 3-point league losses, another 7-point defeat in double overtime. Richmond played well on both sides of the ball in that loss to Stony Brook. Totaled 363 yards, average over 5 yards per play. Limited Stony Brook to 110 rushing yards, but ultimately the struggles continued with that run offense. 47 yards on 17 carries made the difference. Lauletta right now is really doing whatever he can and doing it all for this offense. 26 passing touchdowns this fall, which is tied right now for the single-season program record set in 2013 by Michael Strauss. No turnovers in his first career start last week for Villanova starter Kyle McCloskey under center, but the Wildcats only managed to total 249 yards of offense and uncharacteristically allowed 474 yards against Elon in that 19-14 loss. McCloskey, who also became the first true freshman, by the way, to start at QB for Nova in 6 years, also led the Wildcats, which is a positive, 65 yards, but on 19 carries, so obviously trying to limit that a little bit if you're Villanova. Richmond enters looking to find something outside of its passing attack on offense. Villanova had a streak of holding 9 straight opponents to fewer than 100 yards rushing, broken versus Elon, but that's a different kind of style than the Spiders. And to me, this right now is a statement game. Up to this point in 2017, you're at where you're at. You can't change that, regardless of where both teams are at right now. Who wants to take charge? Who wants to keep alive its hope for the postseason? Because believe me, if you get to 7 wins in this conference, you're going to make the postseason the majority of the time. This one won't. I don't think it'll define the season for any team by any means, but it will show us a whole lot at the end of the afternoon.
Our CA Game of the Week on College Sports Live at 2 o'clock will be from Portland, Maine, as the Black Bears take their show just down the road to take on Delaware. Might I add, it's also a critical game for both of these teams, too.
Unbelievable. 28 points scored per game by Maine during a quick 3-game winning streak. All of a sudden, moving the Black Bears even in league play, 3-3 overall, 4-3 overall. Outside of the offensive attention, the defense has battened down the hatches and then some lately, too. 8 consecutive quarters played, failing to give up an offensive touchdown. In that 23-6 home win over William Mary, Maine gave up 57 passing yards, 3 first downs on 16 attempts, and now faces another team right now. Good news for Maine, bad news for Delaware, searching for answers in the passing game with the Hens. Delaware averages 117 yards per game and all of a sudden needs a response after losing at Towson last week by 1 point. How quickly the conversation's turned, isn't it? 3 straight wins, everything's great. All of a sudden, you got to respond. 35 total passing yards and 7 completions by the UD offense combined clearly stood out in that loss. Delaware did rush for over 200 yards and still enters this one, ranking 2nd in the conference for rushing. But with no balance, things get harder to match and things get harder to score and keep up that quickly. We're expecting a different but unique atmosphere in Portland for this one. For those of you who don't know, Portland, Maine, what do you mean Portland, Maine? Fitzpatrick Stadium is down in Portland. It's a great chance for Maine. I think they did this game to kind of give their fan base, Maine's team in the state, give that fan base an option to come see them. Fitzpatrick Stadium holds about 6,000 people, give or take, and Josh Mack is going to be tested all day long versus a stout defensive front that might be angry and still lingering from last week's defeat. He's just 21 yards away from 1,000 for the year and still averages 130 yards a game on the ground. I don't think you should overlook the kicking game. Kickers are people too.
Yes, they are.
Two of the better kickers as of late at this point in the season could be asked to chip in and contribute right away. You see Frank Rago and for the Blue Hens and Brandon Briggs for the Bears. Both have kind of been that guy. We need some points. You got to get it done, and they've answered. Maine has played Delaware very well in the series without meeting every year, of course. These guys don't play every single year, but Delaware's last win in the series came in 2010 in Newark. And it's not like the Black Bears go to Portland and play this game often and play at Fitzpatrick Stadium. So while staying in their home state, I think that helps, and I think that's a benefit. There's also some similarities between both teams not playing here that often.
Elon, coming off 2 thrilling wins on the road, will come home to take on Towson at 2 o'clock on CA.TV. Can the Tigers pull off another upset this Saturday, Tim?
Right now, I'm not about to doubt the Phoenix, and especially after upping their winning streak to 7 straight with a tough road win at Villanova. But it is kind of one of those sneaky games where things all of a sudden sets up nicely. But Cortez Weeks became the 3rd player at Elon to ever go over 200 yards receiving. He had 11 catches for 205 yards last week. Davis Cheek recorded his 2nd straight 300-yard passing game. To do that against Villanova is even that much more remarkable, and is thrown for 12 touchdowns this fall. At 7-1 overall, coming back home, now you're the number 7 team in the FCS. It's homecoming. Everyone's coming back. Everyone's excited. It's pretty cool to see the train rolling right now for the Phoenix. But with 3 weeks left, Elon still faces New Hampshire on the road next weekend and JMU at home to end the regular season. So obviously the tests and everything is there in front of them. I think Ryan Stover, Sam Callahan, obviously they came up huge last week, and that's why we're talking about them now. 35 seconds left, sealed that upset win over Delaware that gave Towson arguably its best win of the year. Its first win over a nationally ranked team since 2015. And playing spoiler is always easier said than done, especially on the road. But the Tigers are going to pick and choose where you try and stop Elon on offense first and foremost. EU ranks third in the league, 184 yards per game. Deshaun McNair is averaging 24 carries over the last 2 starts. And then you look at Davis Cheek, you look at his targets, where it becomes that much harder, I think, to make the decision and say, where do you want to stop, where do you want to start if you're trying to stop Elon. Adapting to different styles and tempo, in my mind, has been one of the larger takeaways for this Elon team during the turnaround. Towson's pass offense right now put up the numbers sometimes in games has to give this offense a chance, but with 13 interceptions combined and 286 yards of offense per game, keeping up, I don't know if they can keep up and manage. That, to me, is going to be the key factor on Saturday.
Let's close Week 10 with New Hampshire traveling to William & Mary at 2 o'clock on CA.TV. The Wildcats not only making their 2nd trip to Virginia, Tim, but have also had difficulty winning in Williamsburg in recent meetings.
The stat that everyone continually starts with and what you're hinting to right away, when New Hampshire plays in Williamsburg against the Tribe on the road, since 1999, New Hampshire has gone 0-7 in games played at Zabel Stadium. Of course, how much of a factor will that play on Saturday for 2 teams looking to rebound? No clue. I don't have the answer for you. But it is something that you point out. Why have the struggles continued there? The Tribe gets a comeback home, having lost 5 straight, all in CAA play, coupled by that 23-6 loss at Maine last weekend. Quarterback play, like always, is going to grab the spotlight. And the uncertainty, I think, for both teams leading in makes it that much more important and more of a factor. Sean Mitchell and Tommy McKee combined for 6 of 22 passing, 57 yards. In that Maine defeat, the Tribe have 7 passing touchdowns and gain just 270 yards per contest through the air, which is last in the CAA right now. We aren't sure how serious or how long-term the injury sustained by Trevor Knight at JMU is or will be for the Wildcats, and the offense generated just 193 total yards, and just 27 of those came on the ground versus a very good JMU team in that shutout loss. But if Knight is not healthy, the offense right now does not have a lot of experience in Christian Lupoli or the others behind him, so that's a little bit of a concern for New Hampshire coming in. I'm expecting an old-fashioned grind-out affair in a series that has produced some close games over the past year. Over the past series meetings, I should say, each team enters knowing how the other wants to attack it. The Tribe are going to key on that pass defense, while the Wildcats are going to try to force either quarterback to beat them through the air. Whichever team, I think, outrushes the other, wins the battle up front, and that physicality is going to be the victor in my perspective.
A friendly reminder for continued coverage and more throughout Saturday by visiting casports.com/live scores. And Tim, tell the people the best way to get ready for the weekend.
I know you're referencing the Yak, right?
Oh, yeah.
The Yak, yeah. CA Football's official podcast, published every Friday, delivers all the info and insights you need across the conference. I mean, 3 and out. phenomenal segments.
You destroyed
all
me
the background
last Friday.
info. Find the Act by searching CA Football on iTunes and SoundCloud, and join the conversation on social media as well using the hashtag CAFB. Following us as well, to remember, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, just search CA Football.
Good luck to all the teams this weekend. Enjoy the games, everyone.